Everyone here, that's beautiful. Excellent. Ah, מה שלומך? Beautiful. Okay, here we go. We're going to back up. We're going to go back a little so that you get a little bit of a taste of in-house teaching, but also now to focus on where we got up to last week, which was still, here we go, again, which was pre-Taragin. So we're going to hopefully catch up with these students here. 1 second, I'm just going to secure the camera. Not, okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's try this. Mitsuyan. Okay, can you hear me okay? Mitsuyan. Okay, so if I remember, last week we got up to the Yeush after Chachma, is that right? Perek Bet? Yes?
Yes, we're in Perek Bet.
Nachon, just wanted to make sure.
He said how he like did everything on his bucket list.
Bidiyuk. And what happens after he does? And this is Pasuk Yud. He doesn't mean pleasure here. He means anything, just like Atara said, anything on my bucket list, anything that I wanted to accomplish. That's like saying, and we can go, and I'm sure we each have our own bucket list. I want to, Gabi, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at your kitchen. It's really beautiful. I want to redo my kitchen, right? So I wouldn't call that a pleasure. I would call that, wow, like an accomplishment, right? So he says, yep, I had this whole bucket list and I did it. And while he did it, as you can imagine, he really did feel a certain sense of contentment. If I looked back at everything that I had accomplished, now please again try to put yourself in not just the mindset, but literally the life of Shlomo. Imagine looking back and seeing gorgeous Yerushalayim that you built up with amusement parks of Beit Yar HaLebanon, with the Beis HaMikdash, right? Imagine all this. He says, but then I see that it's all ephemeral anyway, and therefore there is no long-term gain. So he says, again, I didn't give up. Instead, I shifted my focus, right? So then I went and I focused on, take a look at Pasuk Yubet, Ufaniti ani, right? New observation. So then I went to pursue L'rot Chochma. I went off to pursue wisdom, v'holelot, right? And all different trivia, right? I said, okay, that's the point, which we already discussed. There are really two different ways of how you understand your relationship with the world. Am I here to benefit the world, or is the world here to benefit me? So he says, so maybe it's really about benefiting me, edifying me through wisdom, this sechlut. And obviously here we discussed the phonetic ambiguity. This is sechlut with the samach, but he obviously means sechlut with the sin, right? So then I pursued all the different intelligences. He said, and I didn't have any qualms about, wait a second, I didn't do this and I didn't do this because I had already done basically everything. And what's ironic is that even today, with modern technology and with the pace at which we can build and we can accomplish, people still have not surpassed the accomplishments of Shlomo, which is really remarkable. Pasuk Gimel. So just like with Maasim, he reached, he says, like a certain temporary satisfaction. Initially, I saw that there's an advantage of wisdom over foolishness, like the advantage of light over darkness. Do you mind if I ask just by how many of you have been to the Blind Museum in Israel? And I think it's only in Israel. Shalhevet, you haven't? Okay, so when you come
Did you say the Blind Museum?
The Blind Museum,
Oh,
which
the
is right.
Blind Museum. I thought you said
Slime.
slime. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
I have been, and I mean, in New York City, there's a slime museum.
Okay, not in Cologne.
Okay.
There is one in Cologne? No.
No, sorry. Someone
There's one in New York and there's one in Chicago also? Okay, I don't know about you. I that was definitely not on my bucket list. I have to like reconsider. No, I'm reconsidering.
I mean, if you become
That's what my kids did last year while I was on the Eshkolot trip.
Okay, wonderful. Can we go back to the Blind Museum? But you've all been to the Blind Museum in Cologne, and the Deaf Museum and the Old Age Museum, right? They're all next to each other. Okay, can anyone share with us what their scariest moment was in the Blind Museum and why? Why do you think that was your scariest moment? Let's see how impactful that visit was on you.
Wasn't there a part where you had to like cross a river, like in a boat or something?
Cross a river, get into a boat. Isn't that interesting? So that's what almost everyone says. The moment that you have to get into the boat and it's in water and you can't see anything. So like you're holding on for dear life, you know, it's everyone. And by the way, who's helping you? There's
Other
a
blind
blind
people.
guide who's helping you get into the boat in the darkness. You're like, okay, this is
I
not.
think the guide was blind.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So very scary, right? Meaning when we can't see, we don't know, and we may slip and we may fall and we may get wet, and that's exactly his point. When you pursue wisdom, it's like the advantage of light over darkness. You can see, and therefore you'll live a more qualitative life, right? The more I know, think of the more I know about driver's ed, right? The better driver I'll be, the better quality of life I'll have, right? The more I know about nutrition, the less nitrates, the more exercise I'll incorporate, right? I'll just live a better life, right? The more I know about psychology, the more I'll be able to interact in different circumstances, right? Everyone see this? So that's exactly his point. Shira, hey, Shira, I hope you're being driven and not driving. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Wow, what an
but it-
overcast day. Overcast day
I
in New
know.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
just saying it's hailing in England.
Sunny,
we win then.
beautiful weather.
It's not-
Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Just have to say that. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
all yours.
It can also work the other way. Sometimes having too much knowledge of something makes it harder. Like
Beautiful.
when I worked in Camp Hask versus Camp Simcha, it was almost easy to work in Hask because like the campers don't know that like while in Camp Simcha it's much more emotionally hard because they knew, like they were aware that they were not like other children. So I feel like it can also work the other way, too much knowledge.
100%. Right. And we spoke about that also in his introduction.
Shani, I also think doctors who know too much, they could think their child has some rare illness because they've got this weird knowledge that
Oh, 100%, 100%. So we saw that number one, it can cause frustration. But now he's going to add something. He says initially he was actually very satisfied with wisdom because it provided him with understanding. When Chazal say, for example, Chacham einav b'rogsho, right? His eyes are in his head, meaning he can understand more, he appreciates more, he sees more, right? He'll live a better life that way. Here we see it, and the foolish person is walking in the dark, right? Meaning it's as if he's always blind, right? He doesn't know, oh, right, that he hasn't learned about, I don't know, the proper way to drive. So he's gonna live like a worse life, right? He has a better chance of dying. But even more than that, right? Think about it, someone who doesn't know about art. So he's never going to appreciate like going to a museum. Someone who doesn't know about like nutrition really won't live. Someone who doesn't know. So Chava, now I'm going to say the other side. Someone who doesn't know the symptoms of certain diseases will never catch those diseases until they're too late. So he said, oh, yeah, kol kach chaval for the foolish one. But then in the same pasuk, right after that clause, v'yadati gam ani shemikre echad yikre et kulam. But then bottom line, he realizes, wait a second, but the same circumstance happens to everyone. What's that circumstance?
Death?
Exactly. Death. He said, but then like, what's the point? Like, we're gonna die anyway. So what? So I know driver's ed, but the guy who's driving towards me, the drunk driver who what doesn't know. So in the end, didn't help anyone, right? There are so many people who either don't pursue this. And again, we know as well, right? Surgeon General's warning, everyone knows now, okay, cigarette smoking causes lung cancer. And yet he says, okay, so the one who smoked and the one who didn't smoke, what happens to both of us? We both die. Not only that, there are plenty of people in the world who have developed lung cancer, even if they never smoked. He says, I know that same event can happen to me, Yikret Kulam, and it happens to everyone. And therefore, and then what is the yitaron of my wisdom then? Right? What really did it benefit me? And I always think about this. I think, you walk around the cemetery, does it say on anyone's tombstone if they were smart or like what they got on their SATs? You know, I was just having this discussion with my daughter who isn't sure which law firm she should join, and with you know, listening to the advantage, disadvantage, and I said, but Rachel, I guarantee they're not going to put it on your tombstone. I'm sorry, that's her name. They're not going to put it on your tombstone. And I was thinking about this in general. Like, really, what's the point? Are they going to write on our tombstones how many doctorates we wrote, and how many books we published? I said, so then, like, what's the whole point? Do you remember when I asked you if you know your great-grandparents? How many of you know your great-grandparents? Had the split. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Do you mind if I ask, like, you knew them, you got to, do you know if they were smart? Great-great-grandparents? Like, I would say so if they, you know, had the genes that eventually got to you. Like, I'd like to believe that they are, but like, who knows? But like, no one ever really talks about that. Like okay, yeah, he was a scientist. I don't even know if he was smart. I don't know. And he's so frustrated by this. He's frustrated. And no one ever remembers. I don't know if my great-great-grandparents were.
Shani, can I just ask you a textual question?
Please.
In terms of the verbs, how, you know, you're saying how like each time he switches from like perspective, it's like a different verb. So like, I guess this is like a technical question, but like, meaning like, how would you pick, like, because I'm seeing like there are other verbs, like he's saying
100%.
amarti, whatever, but he's not switching personalities yet. So like,
Exactly.
why?
Exactly.
So how do you?
firstly, when does he switch? Ufaniti ani, when it's not just a change of verb, but generally ani, when he emphasizes faniti means ani paniti. So
But
I
in
add
Tes
ani.
Vav it says va'amarti ani, but it's still
Beautiful.
within the chachma person.
100%, 100%. And that's why I always say that each one is a different perspective, but you have to see from context, meaning it's a good telltale to tell you, okay, new perspective, new idea, new observation. And then you just have to see from context when he's switching his focus.
Okay. I'm just like, okay, I just feel like that would
Yes,
be
so you'll
like,
see-
yes, like,
exactly,
wait, but this didn't switch, so then it like blows the whole.
Oh, we're
Theory
gonna see,
type thing.
it is gonna blow the whole theory. So just stay tuned. Yes. In other words, I had mentioned to you that it will be easier because you'll see that every time there's a new verb, it's a new perspective. Sometimes it's a new perspective of the same speaker, but sometimes not, right? But at least you'll know that when there's a new perspective, it can be a new speaker. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay.
Gabi.
But what about just about this specific thing? What about someone like I'm thinking offhand, like, oh, Nechama Leibowitz, Rashi, like we still think about them. Yes, I don't really know Rashi's personality per se, but I know that he was, you know, such a Talmid Chacham and like it's still having an impact. I don't know if that's like, I know that that's a question that I popped in my mind. At the same time, there's like almost the whole rest of the world who's like, yes, like I don't know about them, but there are certain people who I think, you know, pop into my mind. It's like that, like we still know about them. And Shlomo HaMelech himself is saying like,
That's what I was
oh,
waiting for. I was
right,
waiting
and
for
yeah,
him to say, Gabi,
we all
thank
know
you.
that.
Like, how can Shlomo say that if we remember him as smart, right? And now he's saying, well, it doesn't make a difference because no one remembers you as smart. What do you mean? We remember you. So Gabi, you yourself answered the question, which is, okay, there may be a few individuals, but you're going to create an entire life philosophy for mankind based on a few exceptional individuals. How about the other, not billion, trillion people in this world, right? Were they smart? Right? And if anything, that even, I'm going to say, that underscores his thesis, right? The fact that there are a few people who you do remember as such. Okay, does that mean no one else was? And I always feel bad. You know, I told you the same idea with right, what's her name? Rosalind Franklin. See, I still forget her. Right,
The
poor
DNA.
Rosalind Franklin, the DNA lady. That, you know, Watson Crick get all the credit, but really she was the smartest one. She was the one who gave them the idea. She was the one who led the experiment. And in the end, she doesn't get any credit. So sad. Avital.
I had a question about the comparison between this and Mishle. Some of these lines seem to just be copy and paste.
100%.
But there, it's very clear that the Chacham is better than the Kathir. And here he's kind of like, I'm not so sure.
But it's also important to recognize that in Mishlei, when he means Chacham in Mishlei, he doesn't mean philosophically oriented or intellectual Chacham. Rather, Reshut Chachma,
Yirat Hashem.
Yirat Hashem. The Chacham there is a religiously edified person. Isn't that interesting? So he would call, Rashi is a Chacham, not just because he was smart, but because he had Yirat Hashem. Heinrich Himmler was very smart, very, very smart, brilliant, but really not a Chacham in the Mishlei sense. So excellent.
Shani, sorry, I don't want to like derail us, but I'm like struggling so much with these psukim because I really feel like I disagree with this whole concept of like what Shiru was saying. Like, I really think ignorance is bliss, like in many realms. Like, I feel like the more you know, the harder your life is, not the better your life is. Like,
That's
in
what
many ways.
He initially said that, and think of something though that you love learning about. Right?
I know, but like, I don't know. Like, I almost feel like even in terms of like being like, I'm going to generalize right now, but I'm going to venture to say that everyone on the Zoom right now is like somewhat smart and like intellectual in the sense that like we all enjoy learning a certain style and way, and we went into teaching, and so like our minds work slightly different than many other people who didn't choose a path like this. Okay, but like I feel like that is very challenging sometimes, like the same like intellectual power that like drives you to know and to learn and whatever, like also like makes life hard sometimes because you are like, let's say, more idealistic, or more about something, and then it's like frustrating that people are either acting a certain way or don't know something, or like whatever. I don't know, I just find like it actually leads to a more stressful and like unfulfilled life than as opposed to like a positive thing. I don't know if this is like it resonating with anybody or not, but like
100%. I think that's, remember when he said Yosif Da'at, Yosif Machov, initially he said exactly as you said, Tara. But I think more, and I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because I think this, the question is, why doesn't he bring up the same frustration as Perek Aleph? Right? He says, yeah, initially I was frustrated, just like you said, because really ignorance is bliss, and Yosif Dat, Yosif Machov. But then when he decided to really pursue it, there was something pushing him. And that is that, do you mind if I ask, like, why are you still a teacher? if you know that it comes with frustration.
I don't know. I ask myself that all the time.
Because you have those moments. Yeah,
because you love it. I know, but like I don't know.
I call them the eureka moments where like, oh my gosh, like you saw a chiddush that like no one else, or you came across like a brilliant Ibn Ezra that like changed the way you look at the world, and you're like, wow, like I'm a different person. I'm gonna live my life differently because of this piece of Rav Soloveitchik or Rav Sachs that I just saw, right? And it's not just moments of inspiration. It's because I worked at this and I pursued it and I found it. That moment where, and Be'ezrat Hashem, right? We'll have a few of these moments throughout the year where like you saw something on your own, like in Tanakh, because like it, like, oh my gosh, wow. I came across this word and I realized, wow, the same word in Tehillim actually appears in Shirat Hazinu, and it's one is answering the other. Shir Shel Yom HaShabbat comes to relate back to Hazinu Hashemayim Va'aretz, and it's so beautiful, like explaining Tzaddik Baralo. I'm like, oh my gosh, now we get it. And now, wow, we're not as philosophically fraught as we used to be, or we're not as intellectually frustrated because, nafal lanu hasimon.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's like
okay, wait.
Johnny, because I feel like it just doesn't end then. Like, meaning, okay, so maybe like one question that might have been plaguing you, or one thought that you didn't understand, is like, okay, so now I know the answer to that. But like, I still feel like sometimes like people who live like a simpler life and are less, I don't know, like less idealistic, less intellectual, less like care about things like this, like are just happier, and like it doesn't bother. I don't.
So you have to remember that right now he hasn't spoken about happiness. He'll say,
No, I know, and I'm trying to not use that word.
Lies aren't
that's not the goal.
but their lives aren't as quality-based lives, meaning,
But
they're.
again, like, okay, when they die, does that mean, like,
so that-
is anyone
thank
gonna
you.
say they
I know.
lived less of a quality of a life? I don't
Beautiful.
think
So
so.
now you sound like Pasuk Tedvav. Now you sound like Kohelet. Beautiful. In other words, can I just share this with you? I'm so sorry because I have nothing against manicures and pedicures. I have something
I
against
do.
people talking about manicures and pedicures. I'm so sorry. Like mamash, like right here, I don't know, or what people call like the shaitel discussions, but it's not dafka shaitels. It's again, and you wonder, like, really, that's what you're spending your time like talking about? And on one hand, Natara, I think exactly what you think, and I think that this is an important conversation to have. I'm not done, l'kaf chova. I really try to like l'kaf schot, like, okay, they're talking about manicures and pedicures because it's going to make them like more excited and healthier and cleaner and more put together to do more chasadim, like whatever it is, but I don't get it. Like I personally don't get it. And I asked myself, wow, if they would only like use that time for something a little more quality, doing or learning or, right? Do you see that? So that's what he's saying. Like at the beginning, he realized, wow, like every parsha that I finish really is more edifying. So I don't know about you, like I get excited sometimes. This is just like a personal thing that I get excited by like, simple like knowledges. Like I love learning about also like how things work. So I think I may have shared this with you that especially in Israel, people take sometimes there's a term in Israel called fryer, right? You're all familiar with that term. That's the worst insult here, that people take advantage of you. So for example, when we finally bought a car after we had, 2 children and we needed to get around, so I would go fill up on gas. And in fact, the car mechanic would say, yes, you need this Tosefet and that Tosefet, and your oil isn't going to run as well unless you buy this 200 shekel Tosefet, for the oil. And, I just believe them all because what do I know about cars? And then I realized, you know what, let me learn about cars. So I signed up for a car mechanics course. And it was one of the most fascinating courses. Like I know how to change a tire, and I can also like explain to you like how the axle in the car works. And I know like when the lights go on, like which ones are really fundamental and which ones not. And I think it really does like, okay, not just not make you a fire, wow, now I understand it more. So I know how to drive better and I know what this light means and how to get around this problem, just to give you like something technical, because he doesn't just mean, philosophical wisdom that will help you. He means like practical wisdom that will help you. Right? Do you see that? Meaning that's why I like nutrition. Perhaps car mechanics and nutrition, I think, are very good examples, because if I learn about nutrition.
Yeah, but even with nutrition, let's go to another route. Sorry, guys, I know you're gonna like kill me, but like sometimes also, like let's say with nutrition, the more you learn, the more you realize that like nobody even knows what they're talking about because they contradict themselves every 5 seconds. Like one year it's like, oh, stay away from this. The next year it's like, no, eat this. No, stay away from that. No, eat that. No, do that. So like, and then in the end of the day, you see people who live till 100 and they're like eating red meat and cake and whatever, and people who die at, God forbid, terrible young ages, and they were super healthy and fit, or the people that get cancer, even though they're like exercising every day and vegans and all that stuff. Like, so it's
Yeah.
like,
Tara, sorry to interrupt you. Or someone who's a nutritionist and they're not careful what they eat, even though they know that.
right.
And I think
Right.
that's frustrating as a JS teacher, as like a Codef teacher, that you think to yourself, why do people not want to listen? Why do people, not want to come to Shiurim? Why don't they have the same interest as me? That's my frustration.
Exactly. So that's his initial frustration, Chava, like, wow, like everyone should be wanting to be a chacham, right? And then Atara, he feels like you, but wait a second, what really is the point? Or let's just say something very clear, right? Everyone knows, again, that's why I like cigarettes. Okay, everyone knows this is terrible. And yet, just like you said, so he said, okay, right, can we agree that if you don't smoke cigarettes, you probably will live a healthier life? Can we agree on that? Okay, Mitsuyan. Right? So that's his first step. You'll probably live a healthier life. So like, why not learn about that? Okay. Right. Meaning, and this is a question that high schoolers have also, should we teach about drugs and alcohol? Because on one hand, I call it the famous machlok between Rabbi Eliezer and Ben Azai. Should we teach women Torah or not is a broader, educational question. Should we teach about drugs and alcohol? so that people know how to live a better quality of life, staying away from drugs and alcohol, or when we teach about it more, then people are more curious about it. And then you're opening up a Pandora's box, right? Everyone see this? So at first, he espouses that idea that the more you teach, the more you edify, the better it is. Amazing. Education is phenomenal, phenomenal. But Atara, you're right. You're sounding like a seasoned educator, right? And by that, I mean exactly like Kohelet is saying, he's very frustrated in the end. In the end, we're all going to die. And in the end, yeah, even if you eat cake and hot dogs, till 120, there are people who live till 120, and he's so frustrated. In the end, you're going to die anyway. And what difference does it make? I think of Einstein's brain, right? Einstein's brain was stolen, and basically now it's in like 68 different pieces, but not so important. But basically, the same person who performed the autopsy in the end took out his brain and wanted to study the brain and realized, okay, if I can discover the cuneiform, the pattern of the literally like the wrinkles in his brain, that's what makes a person smart, right? That's what absorbs the information. Then I'll be able to learn more about intelligence. And he realized okay, in the end though, Einstein is dead. So take his brain if you want, meaning what point? So Atara, you're right. Take a look at Pasuk Ted Zayin. In the end, in Zachron l'chacham maxiel olam, shekvar yamim habayim hakol nishkach, ve'ech yamut hachacham maxiel. It bothers me, but in the end, the chacham really does die with the ksiel. And Shalhevet, I'm so sorry because I saw that you took your hand down.
I mean, I think we've already moved on from this point, but I mean, I'll share it anyway. I wonder if we can be a little sharper in defining our terms and really centering what exactly is our frustration, what exactly is our concern. Meaning, I wonder if we're kind of speaking past each other a little bit. Are we speaking about, for example, when you were speaking about manicures and shaitels, Rabbanit Shani, is your concern that people are speaking about vanity? Is that your concern, that it's shallow?
Yes.
Or Atara, when you're speaking about how, or Atara and also Chava, when you're speaking about the nutritionists, that to me seems a little different. A nutritionist not following their own advice, or a nutritionist changing their advice. Well, there are plenty of people who, if only people would live exactly by what they know is right and be so tamimistic that they've really thought through every single action and live in a very yashar way where there's a coherence of their thoughts and beliefs with what they do. But ultimately, those are two different issues.
Correct.
Either meaning vanity and discussing things that are external and shallow about our appearance of our bodies and how we look is, I understand how that could be put under the same umbrella as both being how it's also frustrating when, say, someone doesn't take advice from a nutritionist. I understand how both fall under the category of not chachma, not chochma, but I'm not sure we're really talking about the same thing here.
Correct. We're not. I think they were also just expressing their frustrations. Yes, but exactly. Meaning to be consistent with Kohelet, he's talking about the shallow nature of folly, right? Folly versus wisdom. He's not talking about Shalhevet, you're 100% right, because both the Tara and Chava were also speaking about the frustration of hypocrisy. So that's not what he's bringing up here. That's more of a Mishlei theme.
I think Chava was talking about hypocrisy, but I'm not talking about hypocrisy. I'm talking about the fact that there's very little knowledge that stays true. I mean, not Torah, but I'm saying in terms of, let's say, science or whatever, let's say nutrition, it's not about hypocrisy. It's about inconsistency, meaning it's the flavor of the decade of what's the best diet or what's this is it just keeps changing, which means that so is any of it true? Because last decade you said stay away from carbs, and this decade you're saying no, carbs are good, and this one it's be a vegan, and now it's no, you need to so that's, do you see, Shalhevet, why it's different?
That's a good point. Excellent point. So, but at the same time, are there certain objective truths in Chachma? And I think he would agree with you. Let's say mathematics, sciences.
I don't know until they prove a different theory. I don't know. I feel look at the history of wisdom and different subjects. And it's I feel there's very few things that have stayed standard. For sure, science. For sure, science.
By the way, science is a great example, right? In the sense that also, this is what I love really about science, that it's built off one of the other. And what he's saying is that if the more science you learn, even if you're right, meaning, and then you'll realize, oh, wow, we thought the theory was X, but actually, carbs are healthier than we thought 10 years ago. So what do you have to keep doing? You have to keep on learning, keep learning. Like, I love reading the Science Times. And you're right, when I read the Science Times now, completely contradicts 10 years ago, but that's okay. Because he's saying, wow, like you'll just keep on learning and sometimes disproving, which is fine, but it's great to keep on learning. And then he realizes, no, it's not. He reached it in the end, like, what's the point anyway? You're going to die. And then 100 years from now, they'll disprove everything that you thought, meaning that you're right. He is going to be addressing these issues. So, and we're going to see them more coming up. So I'm glad that you're voicing them now, but there are going to be many more. Okay, Shalhevet. I don't know if that was the same hand or not.
Yeah, no, it's a different hand. I mean, to me, I think what's troubling about Kohelet is he's taking this data, but then this is his reaction, right? We can all look at the same set of data and arrive at a different conclusion, right? His conclusion is, well, given even if we could see something hypothetically good to extract from, say, like reading the Science Times, as you were mentioning, his reaction is, well, we're all going to die anyway, so who cares? To me, like that, it makes me wonder, considering this is Ketuvim, this is not really in the same level of, say, like Torah or even Nevi'im for that matter. Like, is it like sacrilege to say Kohelet, is that correct? Like, to even just have a question of doubt if is this correct or not? Like, is this an appropriate reaction? Is it like this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world, and then this is your reaction? Like, it makes me almost wonder, like, how am I even, like, is it even like, how can I even entertain this idea that, well, we're all gonna die anyway? Like, there's something like deeply uncomfortable about that to me. So
I love it. The reason I threw you a kiss was now you understand why Chazal were very apprehensive with regard to the canonization of the Sefer. Exactly for that reason. Exactly for that. But in the end, they decided, you know what? The advantages of going to that dark place, and there are dark places, and they bring up a lot of these, not just doubts, but like you said, sacrilegious ideas. And that's why most people don't learn this in high school. But I do think as educators, I think we have to go there. And even if none of you in the end are ever going to teach Kohelet, you need to go to these places. Do you see that? Like, I don't mean, I have a friend who's a Baalat Tshuva, and, whenever we talk about, issues, philosophical issues, she says, Shani, everything you know is in your head, but I've lived through this darkness. Okay, it's okay. I don't have to go there. I don't have to go there physically. I don't have to try out, the depressing crevices of the matrix. I just have to, and that's what's so fascinating about Kohelet, that I can go there. And as a teacher, I can bring my students there. Remember I used the term like, okay, they're entering Jumanji. I don't take it lightly. I really don't. It means that they can go there and they can explore this. And Shalhevet, you're right. It can bring them to like dark places of questioning. Now, I will tell you what I found in many years of education is that those that aren't fully ready to explore it, so, they sit in class and they, again, they respond, but it's not going to, it really doesn't turn them off religiously. It's okay, they know they're being guided step by step. But for those that are somewhat there already, and you're affording them this opportunity, not just to enter into these thoughts, but you're with them as their Torah teacher, with your Kisoy Rosh and your, and your halachic strictures, and you're talking like this. It's so, I have to say, it is so edifying for them. It provides for them, I have to share this with you, it provides for them an address for life. They're like, anytime, I guarantee this, like 30 years from now, they're going to have a religious crisis. They have no idea. They can't go to their shul rabbi because their shul rabbi thinks that, they're a tzaddik. And they're going to come back to you because they remember that you went to those places with them. And it's, I think, such a healthy religious avenue, not for everyone, but I think like Chazal, that the advantages outweigh the dangers. I really do. But I'm glad that you're noting how, I don't use the term dangerous and scare everyone too much, but yeah, yes, we're entertaining all these thoughts. Notice for Atara, it's a great avenue for her frustrations. So kol hakavod. No, I think it is important in Tanakh to have that shira.
Sorry, two things. First, I've been thinking about this whole Kohelet thing a lot, just, lately. So, and even just this whole thing with like the wisdom, no wisdom. So, like a lot of times, like I tell my students, like, you have to always do your best, and it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, no one's going to ask you what you got on your Chumash test, your SATs. In the moment, it feels like the end all be all. So these kids feel all this stress for their test, and I tell them all the time, I'm not belittling the stress because I know in the moment, it matters. But like at the end of the day, like you're not going to be on like looking for your spouse and he's going to be like, what did you get on that Chumash test in 10th grade? So like on the other hand, to say that then it's hevel, like, well, it's something, then like your attitude can be like, wow, I'm gonna die anyway, no one's gonna really care, I don't need to put anything into it. So I feel like that's a little bit of a balance, number one. But the thing that I was thinking about, that just came up now, but like the thing I thought about the most was just like the fact that we said that, all these answers, it's like everyone, when they interviewed people about why or why not, like what they thought the purpose of life was, that it can't be something that everyone else is not, if otherwise like half the world is not doing it, right? Like if it's about keeping the mitzvah in the Torah, well, if there are all these people not keeping it, then how could that be the purpose of life? But maybe it still is the purpose of life. And everyone, we all come into the world with like the opportunity, and then what we choose or don't choose to, I don't know if it means that it's wrong just because everyone's not doing it. Because then
Beautiful, beautiful. No, 100%. This is an interesting philosophical debate as well, meaning should we disregard a possibility of thought just because most people aren't doing it? So we're going to see back and forth with Kohelet, and he's going to say, yeah, if the world doesn't work that way, then it can't be that that's really like what's so meaningful, because he's saying if it's so clear, then the world should definitely at least work this way. So it's not so much what people are doing and as much as how the world works, but we're going to keep on revisiting that. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up. And by the way, Sharon, I'm glad that you brought up also almost this dialectic that we feel. I was just going to ask Atara, when your daughter Naba tells you then that, I'm making this up, that she got a 50 on her science test, really you should say, that's fine. Like, who cares? We're going to die anyway. And like,
She
what
would
good-
love if I said that to her.
I was gonna say, so do you?
Absolutely not.
Why? Why? What value is there? No, so now
I grew up in a house where you had to do well on your tests.
Why? Why?
that's why I always say the bigger message is did you put in your, like, did you try? Meaning the outcome, I get right at the end of the day. Firstly, not everyone was built with the same wisdom. So kids have a science mind. Some students have, like, whenever my students ask me anything about math, I'm like, God, this is why I teach Tanakh. Like,
Bottom line,
Right.
do you want them to know? Do you want them to know certain things? Do you want them to know, I don't know, the periodic table? Do you want them? Do we believe that there's value in that?
I do think there is value.
I'm not
I
sure that
think-
that's why I care about the grade, though, that they know the information. I think it's more just like you have to, like, you should do well
No.
and like succeed. And I don't know, just
Care
like
more about doing well than knowing the information.
maybe, I don't know. I'm telling you, this is bringing me to a dark place, Shani. This class is not working for me every day.
No, it gets better. It really does get better. And just that, I want you to know as
I
well.
think
that-
about it all the time now. Kohal's like, it's always in the back of my head.
Me too. And I've been learning this for 30 years and I still think about this all the time. And Shalabit, I will tell you that I think that many of this more, I don't know, broad thinking, I agree with you. His terminology is also not fine. It's going to become much more specific and much more refined as we go chapter by chapter, speaker and speaker, just like in a debating team, meaning you have to present your platform. And then as people debate you, you have to, right? You're forced to clarify your position much more. So right now we're still in the broader frustrations. Okay, I saw Allison had her hand up, and then she'll have it, and then we're gonna go on. Okay,
Oh, yeah,
Allison.
Shani, you went there. I was just gonna say to Shira, like, yeah, my students do the opposite of what you say. Like when they are asked to take a Chumash test or something like in Judaic studies that freaks them out, it's like, well, the law firm that I'm gonna work at is not gonna ask me what I got in my Chumash test, so why should I care? So it's not even about death. I don't even go that far. It's just like the priorities are different. So like, med school is not gonna care what I got in of either. So like, you know what I'm saying? They still do get stressed, but Shani, you went there anyways, but just more long term with death. But thanks.
Beautiful, true. Okay, she'll have it.
For what it's worth, before I give back my tests in my class, we call it the speech, and either they can say the speech or I can say the speech, but there is a speech, and it goes something like this. This is not the most important thing in life. What is far more important is that you gave your best effort, that you learned something, that you collaborated nicely with your friends, and that this enters your heart as an Oved Hashem, that it helps you do mitzvot, and that you feel really good in yourself. And if you know that you didn't try your best, then the question is how for this coming test you can try even harder, how you can feel better in yourself, and how this can also make you into a better Oved Hashem. And so at this point, I say it so often that they can say it or I can say it, and it's my shtick. It's what I do all the time. And also I clarify that it is important as a measure for themselves how well they are doing. Like sometimes students will tell me like they won't phrase it exactly this way, but they'll say like they'll like it's well actually no, sometimes have explicitly told me it's very chutzpah, but they'll say it's your fault that I didn't do well on this test. My fault as a teacher. I mean, that's why I always tell students, the test is most first and foremost for you. Your teachers, your parents, they support you, they care about you, but ultimately this is your journey and your growth and how well you performed is a measure for yourself of like how much you mastered or the areas that you didn't master. And it's an important for your journey and your as an Oved Hashem for yourself. I'm here to just guide you on your journey. That's my purpose. So it's you're not making me feel angry. I mean, I might be sad and it's disappointed on some level, but it's really ultimately what you're going to take away from this and how you're going to make changes to your life if you're not happy about it. So it's sometimes about reframing it. Because I think sometimes students do get hung up on the numbers of like, I got a 91, I got an 89, and they obsess over it. They obsess over it. But it's really, it's about I still do give grades. I'm not part of the anti-grade team. There are people who are anti-grades for Limudei Kodesh for this reason. I don't agree with that. But I do think you still do need to teach them what you believe about what the grade is supposed to be communicating. There has to be some adults in their life that tell them like you have to keep your eye on the prize, and the prize I think is to be a strong Oved Hashem, right? So like I make that explicit.
Excellent. So again, to bring it back to Kohelet for a second, Kohelet is saying something similar. It can't just be about the knowledge. It's definitely not about the grade, but he's even saying it's not even about the knowledge, right? Because, okay, you're going to die anyway, right? And therefore shall have it. It's wonderful that you say, yes, it's about Avodat Hashem. It's about your Ben Adam L'Chavero. Beautiful, beautiful. So take a look. He's very frustrated. So I'm sorry, I'm taking us all to a really bad place right now. Pasuk Yud Zayin. V'saniti et hachayim. He says, and therefore I hate life. I hate life. If it's not about what you accomplish, and it's not about what you learn, kira alai hamaseh shenasa tachat hashamayim. I hate this maaseh that is done, right? Which maaseh again is he referring to? Hamaseh shenaseh tachat hashemesh, that I can't even control. Everyone together now. Death. Remember when I said, well, you don't know what to say, just say death. Again, death, meaning no matter what you do, what long-term value, you know you're going to die. So then what's the point? What's the point? And I have to say, it's so interesting, like in Eretz Israel now with all these young soldiers dying, more and more people are talking about this, right? And what's the point? And it's interesting to hear like a religious mindset versus like a secular mindset. Like, what was the point? Someone said, well, a mother said, this is very sad for me, but I know that my son is having such a great time up there, in Shamayim. And a Chiloni father said, well, I don't believe that. And who cares? Like, I'm the sad one, and so what's the point? Like his life, and it just shows you what, well, our children for you to get enjoyment. So we're going to speak about all this. Don't worry. This saniti anit kol amalim. When you hate life, right? When you see it as meaningless, he looks back even at his accomplishments and he realizes, I hate those also. Shani amel tachat hashemesh. Because now, what point is there, even in what I accomplished? Not only it did not give me that sense of fulfillment. After all, as you already said, he said, okay, it's all ephemeral, but it's even worse than ephemeral. In the end, someone else is going to inherit what I built. And think about it, like they get the credit for it. And I always talk about, whether it's buildings, so, okay, the, Lindenbaum family gave, Baruch Hashem, money for a midrash at Lindenbaum, but in 20 years from now, maybe someone else, and then everyone's going to forget about what the Lindenbaums did. And he's so bothered by this. And you know what's worse? You don't even know if the person that you left it to, who's going to get like credit for what you did, you don't even know, is he wise or is he a fool? Is he going to destroy everything or is he going to build off of it? And especially for Shlomo HaMelech to know in his own lifetime, at the end of his life, that everything he built isn't going to last. Can you imagine that frustration? This isn't even hypothetical for him. He knows it. And he's going to control everything that I invested in, and that I put my wisdom in. Right? It's so havel. And it really is. Think of your own, I don't know, your own project. You taught 6th grade, for 5 years, and you created a whole curriculum and you changed and you thought like, this is the best curriculum for 6th graders, for Chumash. And then what happens? Then you're promoted to 8th grade. And it's so frustrating because then comes a new 6th grade teacher who literally revamps everything you did. And then I'm like, what's the point? Like, what do I do now? I'm going to get these 6th graders and I'm going to have to do in 8th grade what I did with them in 6th grade. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And he says, therefore, saboti ani liya'ish et libi. I reached a point where, and I just contented with literally yeush. What is yeush? Despair.
Hopelessness.
Exactly. So I let my heart just feel this despair. It's just like all nothing. Like you can just imagine this numbness and frustration that he's feeling. He says, I'll even tell you more. Because there are people who accomplish great things with wisdom and with knowledge and with talent. And then, how many of you have had this experience, or as teachers can definitely relate to this experience? You have that student who can work so hard on something, whether it was studying for a test or a project, and then the person who, didn't even work hard got a higher grade, or, okay, stole the regents and got a higher, whatever the case may be. Or I remember this story actually happened with one of my daughters, that she tutored someone for a test in law. And that person that she tutored, she spent so much time tutoring this person, the student. In the end, that student got a higher grade than she did. You know how frustrating?
I had that happen to me, Shani, with I remember like a Rabbi Mordechai Cohn class in Stern, which is like really hard. And I studied for the midterm or the final with my sister, who was married already and like didn't have time to do anything and didn't really care. And I taught her everything and she got like 3 points higher than me. And I was so mad.
So mad, right? And that's exactly it. He's saying it's so frustrating. And that frustration, he says, just proves that there's something wrong here. It's worse than hevel. It's just ra'ah. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're going to say, well, I don't know. They took into account that she was married, whatever. Who cares, right? But this happens all the time. All the time. You can call it luck. You can call it good luck or bad luck that the other person gets. You invest in the same stock and you research, okay, this stock, it's going to be a good stock. And then the person who just, okay, fine, I'll put my, my coin down on number 8 and he succeeded. And I call us like, why does it work this way? Right. So then what's the point? Why invest so much? And he means both in the accomplishments, but also in wisdom. Then what's the point? Shira and Shalhev, we're talking about effort. It's like, what's the point? What's the point? If bottom line, it's not going to make a difference. Because let's say you put in the effort in the end, you're going to be so frustrated because what do you know? In the back of your mind, there's someone who's not putting in any effort and they're doing just fine. Not only that, when you're sitting and studying, you're going to be so frustrated. And at night as well, you're not going to be able to go to sleep. Right? And that is so meaningless, he says. So then what's the point? So let's end today with Pasuk Chaf. Ein tov ba'adam. He says that's what led me to my third pursuit, which if you remember was intellectual hedonism. Ein tov ba'adam sheyochal b'shata ve'erat nafsho tov ba'amalo. Gam zo ra'iti ani ki miyad ha'elokim hi. That's what led me to realize, you know what? The point is not to exert too much effort. The point is just do what you enjoy. Just go ahead and eat and drink. And for some of us, that also made me, and pick up a good book and go, I don't know, save some lives and do some really cool operations or argue a court case or go and fix a car, right? Whatever it is, just do what you want to do. It's not about wisdom and it's not about accomplishments. Just pursue what you want to do. He says, and I'm going to prove to you now that that's ultimately from God. Because, as some of you heard me saying to the previous class, that we all have, right, different things that we enjoy. Right? So I want you to think for next week, right, what it is. If you had, I don't know, all the money and all the time in the world, right, what would you do? Some of you would probably still be doing what you do because you love doing what you do. And others would say, no, I would tour the world. I would, I don't know, just cook and eat. I would, I don't know, I would hike. I would, what gives you pleasure? And strangely enough, we each have really different desires. I'm not saying that we all don't like a little bit of, I don't know, let's even just start. I'm going to start with Chava for a minute. Chava, what do you love? What do you love doing? Can't hear you. Yeah, I think you're still muted. Right? Oh, am I the one who can control it? 1 second.
It's me. Sorry. I actually just love learning. If I could just keep learning, I would never do any cooking or cleaning or anything. I would just literally love learning. My only other thing is that I like doing is sitting near the beach or like walking near the beach. Those are my two things. Effectively, that's all I ever want to do.
Excellent. Now, do you mind if I just ask by show of hands, how many of you dislike the beach? Really, when Chava said beach, you're like, ooh, sand, salt, no. Again, dirt, showers for my kids after, no. Allison and Avital really don't like the beach. And I'm just going to use this as an experiment, right? Everyone see this? An example of, this is such a great example of how so many of us really have different, almost inborn, obviously there's nature and nurture, but very different desires and passions. And I'm even going to say pleasures that we want to pursue. So on that note, I see that, yes, Shira, I see your hand is up. Can I bother you to remember what you're going to say for next week? Yeah, because it's going to come up again. Mitzvian, I'm wishing you all a Shavua Tov. So I'm ending on a high note, just so that you don't go totally to the dark place.
Thank
How
you.
is that a high note?
Enjoy. This is
Do what you love, Tara.
What?
Do what you love.
Do what you love. Okay.